With a population of over 1.4 billion, China is the largest marketplace on the planet with the largest amount of data. In 2017, the Chinese government created a development plan to lead the world in artificial intelligence by 2030. The goal? To become the global center of innovation and build a domestic industry exceeding $150 billion. That same year, China accounted for 48% of the world's total funding in artificial intelligence startups. Yet for many, what drives the business of China remains shrouded in mystery. What's driving this entrepreneurial ecosystem? How can entrepreneurs collaborate with China or model its innovative culture closer to home? Our next session will explore these questions and more. Please welcome back to the stage, Peter H. Diamandis.
All right. So this is our first module, and those of you who have not joined us before, our goal here is to bring you the smartest thinkers, have you listen and then ask questions, and really make this as interactive as possible. So ultimately, the question of why China, it isn't about what you're reading on the news. It isn't about politics. It isn't about trade. It is about the concentration of engineers, the concentration of scientists, the availability of data, and really the upswell of AI that's coming online. It's extraordinary. It is a very unique environment that's going to give birth to perhaps different types of AI. I'm really excited to hear from our two speakers. So we have Kai-Fu Lee. I'll introduce Kai-Fu properly in a moment from Innovation Ventures. I'm very proud to call him a friend. He's hosted us now twice. We've gone to China. And then David Lee, spelled differently, the head of Innovation Lab in Shenzhen, who hosted us. And I have to say that when we were in China, hearing these two gentlemen speak about what was going on right now and why it was going on and where it was going was transformative. So this year, we have a different bold actions tool. I want to take 1 second. Please go to page 29 in your book. There are 3 segments here. I want you to please take notes. I would like you to please, as you're listening, jot down thoughts. The first is, as you're hearing Dr. Lee and David Lee speak, is there a technology or talent that you want to acquire or learn about? You know, are there experiments that you want to run, data that you want to collect? Is there assets that it's time for you to sell, or investments that you want to make? Now, I remember the first time I heard both of them speak, I probably took 10 pages of notes. And so in the back of your book, starting on page 51, are open free notes. So without further ado, it is an honor and a pleasure to bring our first rock star onto the stage. Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, he is the chairman and CEO of Innovation Ventures, a $1.7 billion venture fund. He is the president of Innovation's AI Institute. I've been there. It's extraordinary what he is incubating. Previously, he was the president of Google China and has held executive positions at Microsoft, at SGI, and at Apple. He's got a breadth and a depth like no one else on the planet. He has, I believe, currently 14 unicorns in his stable at Innovation. He has been named as one of the top 100 most influential people by Time Magazine, and for me, he is one of my, someone who is my go-to person on both AI and China. Please welcome to the stage Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. Hi.
Thank you so much. Peter is such a dear friend, and there's a great audience in conference. So I'm going to talk about the AI, and I'm going to have someone even more famous than Peter introduce me again.
It's a great thing to build a better world with artificial intelligence. 人工智能正在改变世界。
So you thought only his granddaughter spoke Chinese. But why am I showing this demo? This demo demonstrates a technology called deep learning, which is an omni-use technology that can learn concepts based on large amounts of data and make powerful and superhuman decisions, classifications, and predictions with the limitation it has to be only one domain. So this demonstration shows when you train it on a lot of President Trump's speech, it actually speaks like him, and that liking him can be transferred even to Chinese. So that's the power of deep learning. This also is intended to show the success of Chinese AI companies, as what you just heard came from iFlyTech, a top Chinese company. So if we look at the capabilities of AI, from a research point of view, I already mentioned, deep learning, one domain, lots of data, beats human every time. However, it doesn't generalize, so it's limited to what I just described. So what can what I just described be used in real life? Well, in my book, AI Superpowers, which I think all of you have, I talk about the 4 waves of AI. The first wave is internet. Why is internet suitable for AI? Well, that's the one area where it's one domain, huge amount of data. What's the domain? It's Amazon predicting what you might buy. Google thinks what ads you'll click on. Facebook figuring out how to keep you longer on their page. So those are all objective functions and metrics within each domain where every day we are clicking and using those pages, thereby not only creating training data for Facebook, Google, and Amazon, but also labeling it for them. So, for example, in each of the cases, think about this objective function. So one domain, let's say you're Facebook. You collect lots of data, people coming in and clicking on things in the news feed and not clicking on things, each of which is a hint for you. And then you as Facebook have an amazing knob. On that knob, you can say, optimize this thing. And this thing can be, make me more revenue, have the user see more ads, or keep the user on the page longer. And you know what? That was the reason that got Facebook in all this trouble. Because AI gives each user of the AI technology a magical objective function, which when you're the CEO, can align it with your business goal. Can you imagine if for your business, you have this magical black box and you can say, get me more users, make me more revenue. I don't want revenue, I want profits. I want higher EPS. And it just that does it for you. So Facebook couldn't resist the temptation to optimize those numbers and forgot to look after other things. Okay, so that's internet AI, and that's what has made phenomenal companies, Facebook, Google, Amazon, also Microsoft, and Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent. These are the internet companies with the most data, 4/7 in the US, 3/7 in China. These are now they're soon going to be the most valuable companies in the world. However, AI isn't just for internet companies. If you're a business with a lot of data and a single domain, let's say you're a bank that wants to minimize loan defaults, or let's say you're an insurance company that wants to minimize claims by approving and not approving insurance. And let's say you're an investment company that wants to pick a stock that would be the highest 12 months from now. It's all very suitable for you to use AI. And to give you one extreme example, just so that you can see how it works, we invested in a loan app. And this loan app is actually just a mobile app. You download and you say, I want to borrow $200, and it's zapped to you. So how many of you would be willing to go out on Wilshire Boulevard with $200,000, $200 to each of $1,000 that you can handpick walking on the sidewalk and giving them and telling them, pay me back in 6 months? How many of you would do that? What kind of default rate would you get? 80%? Maybe because it's Wilshire Boulevard, it's 70%. But this loan app default rate is down to 3%. And the interest rate annualized is 36%. So you do the math. So how did it accomplish that? Well, obviously, like any loan, it would collect a lot of user information, address, where you work, where you live, how much you make, do you own a house, and so on and so forth. But it also collects information from the phone. And it collects actually 3,000 pieces of information from the phone that are proven to be valuable into the consideration. So when AI does its correlation with all that it knows about you, the 25 things you filled out and the 3,000 things on your phone, it can draw a powerful correlation and decide, are you the kind that defaults or not? And it optimizes the objective function to minimize default rate or minimize putative computed default rate. So what 3,000 things does it have? Well, it has what kind of phone you have, what kind of apps you have. Do you have lots of gaming apps? Do you have gambling apps? Do you have cannabis apps, right? And also, do you have serious apps? Do you have Quora? So all of that counts for or against you. And it also collects how much time you spend on various types of apps, and also what day of the month is it? Is it before paycheck or is it after paycheck? That makes a big difference. How long did it take for you to type in your name and address? Taking too long and too short may also have possible ramifications. And then we just for fun checked the least important feature, and it was how much battery is on your phone. That actually matters just a tiny little bit. If you think about it, if you're someone who habitually plug in your phone like OCD, you probably are a little bit like someone who pays back loans. And the converse may also be true. So check your phone. If the battery's level's low, not so trustworthy. But seriously, all of these is collected, and battery level is a tiny little vote. Think of these 3,000 features, some having 1 million votes, some having 1 vote. Battery has 1 vote, but collectively it gets the default rate way down. So this company is amazingly profitable. That's wave 2. Wave 3 is perception AI, the ability to see and hear, computer vision, speech recognition. Amazon Echo is an example. Another example is face recognition in China. I know that's a little bit controversial at times, but let me give you an example. It provides amazing safety with some questions about privacy. But if you think about it, all of us tolerate having face recognition and cameras at airports because those are dangerous. Well, what about concerts? For some people, they'd be uncomfortable, but let me tell you a short story. There's a famous singer named Jackie Chan from Hong Kong who went to China recently and gave 4 concerts. And in the 4 concerts, 40,000 people came, and 23 got arrested because they were recognized as they walked in with their tickets, their faces were seen by the face recognition, matched against the most wanted criminal, and 23 of them decided to take a chance because they love Jackie Chan. And now they're all in jail. So you can draw your own judgment about at what point is it fair to trade off privacy for security. And obviously every country, every person may draw it differently, but in China, it went for more safety. Finally, another example in the 3rd wave is Amazon Go, the autonomous store. You just take everything and put it in your bag and walk away. No longer do you need a cashier. No longer do you need to waste time checking out. Those are all done by computer vision, recognizing by what you took, what you did, what your hands did, and what you put things back. Finally, the 4th wave is autonomous AI, and that is robots that could function in agriculture, pick fruits, decide how much water, how much to fertilize. They could work in factories, doing visual inspection, even doing assembly, simple assembly. And also autonomous cars and drones and flying cars and so on. So wave 4 essentially gives the ability to move and also manipulate. And that, of course, is the hardest. So these 4 waves will happen over the next 15 years in overlapping ways, creating huge amounts of value. And in order for AI to work, you need a massive amount of data and good tagging or labeling, and work in a single domain with lots of compute power and AI experts. So speaking of experts, who's leading in this AI expert? Well, clearly, US scientists leads everything. US and Canada basically created all of AI technologies that imaginable. So one might imagine that US is way ahead, along with more patents, more papers. So how can China have a chance? So let me challenge the assumption that whoever is ahead in research shall be ahead. See, this is actually part of the current US-China export control and dispute. It's based on the assumption that US universities are way ahead. Therefore, if you block Chinese from access to this, then China will be contained. Well, first, great countries should work together, but even if you wanted to contain China, it won't work for the following reasons. First, there aren't that many breakthroughs in AI, and they're not that hard once they've been published. So here's an example of all the medium, small innovations and one big breakthrough called deep learning. And today, deep learning is very well understood by Chinese, American, Japanese, European researchers. So it's just a matter of who can build the product faster, more efficiently, and collect more data. And secondly, given there's only one breakthrough, when there are no more breakthroughs, we are at the stage of implementation, not research. It's not the case there are new breakthroughs every week. You can read about new AI applications in cancer, playing Go, doing debates, and you think that's breakthrough after breakthrough. No, that is just all built on deep learning. Those are just applications. So the winner is going to be he who implements well, not he who has breakthroughs. Obviously, the country with breakthrough will win, but there hasn't been any breakthroughs in the history of AI. 63 years, only one breakthrough, and that was 11 years ago. So anyone who tells you more breakthroughs are coming in fundamental research in AI that will make machine learning more like human being, well, there's no engineering data to support that. Now, of course, it's not impossible, but it's just very unlikely that it could happen very quickly. Obviously, other people like our mutual friend Ray Kurzweil would disagree, but I think data is currently on my side. So the third observation is AI people love to share. So there's open source on GitHub, TensorFlow. So for a new person coming on board, it's not that hard. So these 5 assumptions, the 5th one is changing. If you have a lot of young engineers, you can do many types of AI. You don't need those super scientists anymore. So now, applying those 3 observations to China, I will tell you, China is leveraging all the things that's shown in orange and doing 6 things that are important to note. First is that there are a massive number of engineers. The number of papers are increasing. Second is Chinese products are copycats no longer. Only 5 years ago, there were a lot of copycats, but today, many Chinese apps are actually ahead of China. In the orange column, it's worth about $350 billion, and it includes things like full mobile payments, things like video-based social networks, things like shared bicycle, things like gamified, socialized e-commerce. So when I say these terms, they might sound like fancy terms, but really, you don't have them in the US. The Chinese entrepreneurs have initially learned from the US because China was a small market with little money back then. Now that China had all these more people coming on the internet and lots of capital going into China, entrepreneurs grew and flourished and improved. An American belief that once a copycat, always a copycat, is proven wrong in China. Once a copycat, you choose if you want to aspire to be an entrepreneur and innovator. Because didn't we all copy when we started learning music or art? And why can't it be that you start by learning from the masters, then you have new ideas? I think the Silicon Valley view is too extreme in this particular case. Obviously, copycats who always copy for their lives will not amount to much. But those who learn can emerge innovative and triumphant. And we can see here on the right side, many Chinese innovations are being copied to other places, including the US. So for those of you who have children, you can actually prove this for yourself. One of these apps is called TikTok. TikTok is a Chinese app that has an English edition. Let your kids try it and let them tell you if it's not better than Instagram and Snapchat. Okay? So you can actually try it. So China and US have emerged into parallel universes. I'm not saying this is a good thing, but this is what happened. In terms of all the uses are completely different in US and China. And that is, for China, it also means coming back to can the White House, quote unquote, contain China. It's really not containable in this mobile AI world because all the apps run differently. So by not letting Google and others go to China, it has absolutely zero consequence When we look at, for example, Vice President Mike Pence's speech in the Hudson Institute, Google shouldn't go to China with Snapdragon because that will be helping the Chinese, ... It's simply totally misinformed. Okay, one could be principled and say Google shouldn't do this or that based on their values, but there's absolutely nothing that the Chinese companies need to learn from the US at this point. Now, what I say here may not apply to other areas. There are many areas in which US is truly ahead of China, but in terms of mobile, where the most value is being created, and AI, where it's going to be even greater value, China is fully self-sufficient. The third reason is that the Chinese entrepreneurs are very fast-moving. The US companies are incredibly gentle in the way they compete with each other. In China, that would not happen. In US, for example, in terms of food delivery, you have Grubhub and OpenTable, Groupon, and Yelp. In China, that would never be allowed to happen. The Chinese competition is like one coliseum. If you do anything with food, you're in the coliseum. You keep fighting until one emerges successful. And in China, that company is called Meituan. And if you look at what Meituan actually does, in 100 cities with over 2 million people, plus many other smaller cities, anyone can order food from at least 200 restaurants, and it will be delivered to you while it's still hot within 30 minutes. And they figured out how to do that. And it is not a matter of AI or technology or drones or robots. They just hired 600,000 people and created an Uber-like system that incentivized them and penalized them if they do a good or bad job. And managing this 600,000 people in the eyes of an American company would be unthinkable because they're paid very little because in order for Meituan to break even, they have to make delivery of your dinner 70 cents per delivery. And in the US, it's about $7, if not higher. And that's why you can't get what Meituan does. And Meituan basically squeeze down everything they can, make it operationally excellent, build AI systems, pay people very little, but if they do a good job, give them a career path and manage. And the 600,000 people, the turnover rate is probably 30%. So what entrepreneur would want to deal with such a messy business? Well, the entrepreneur that wants a $25 billion valuation. That's what happened in Meituan. So reason number 4, China has more capital going into it in AI, and Sinovation Ventures actually has 4 AI unicorns currently valued at $21 billion. There are a total of about 18 AI unicorns in China, certainly no less than the US. I don't know how many, but roughly, let's say, call it about equal. And then another thing about China that's really, really important to remember is that massive data makes AI work better. So on the right-hand side, you see people trying different algorithms. Each of the lines tries a different algorithm, different expert, but the more the data, the better it works. So rather than hiring algorithm scientists, just have some good ones and then throw lots of data at it, because more data begets better performance. And that is a really important thing because China has a lot of data. So in the era of AI, if data is the new oil, then China is the new OPEC. So how much data does China have? Well, 3 times more users than the US, but also more usage. 50 times more mobile payment, 10 times more food delivery, 300 times more shared bicycle, and all of this is rocket fuel for AI. Taking mobile payment as an example, China mobile payment has exceeded the Chinese GDP. And in China, there are basically no credit cards or cash anymore. My wife was out last month and she saw a beggar holding up a sign that says, "I'm hungry, scam me." Because holding out a pen is no good. Nobody has cash, except maybe some foreigners who visit. But that's not enough. So you got to get scanned. Everybody pays. This is an amazing system where anybody pays anybody. 700 million people. They can pay each other with basically 0 transaction fee, instantaneous transaction, and micro payment. I can give you 10 cents if I want. And that allows the whole economy to move much more efficiently and quickly. And it also helps move the whole China economy from a savings mentality to a spending mentality, much as credit cards did for the US, but so much faster. And of course, all that data is the most valuable data. Think about your click on Facebook. How critical is that? How certain is that? Have you clicked on things you don't like? Of course. But when you paid, that is a really, really strong signal to whoever is collecting that data. And Tencent's collecting it, Alibaba's collecting it, but also the local convenience store is collecting it when you scan at the store. And finally, the Chinese government is very supportive of AI, not quite the way in which you read in the New York Times, that what they say is not wrong, but the most important thing about the Chinese government policy is that they're willing to build huge infrastructures. For example, new highways that will have sensors that talk to the cars to make them safer. And that may help Chinese companies launch autonomous vehicles earlier than American companies, even though the technology is inferior, because the barrier of launching autonomous vehicles is about human lives and safety. And to the extent that the highways can help the cars drive more safely, that might be good. And what about cities? Well, one Chinese city, Xiong'an, is building its entire downtown in 2 levels. One level, top level, is all park, trees, pets, kids, bicycles, skateboards, and human pedestrians. And then the level underneath, the B1 level, are the cars. So all of a sudden, you eliminate the possibility that a car would hit a human, such as happened in Phoenix with Uber. So that may be the brute force, extremely expensive brute force way infrastructurally get the Chinese autonomous vehicles to launch and collect data and become better, while Americans are still looking for Phoenix and other cities to do trials and perhaps struggling. I think the reluctance or the difficulty to put hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild a city is potentially something that would pull US behind. And if you think about what pushed US forward, one of the key things was when President Eisenhower built the interstate highway, which is not that different from the Chinese downtowns and highways. So the infrastructure spent may be something that's worth considering for all countries. So all in all, if we measure China, US, who is ahead, I personally really don't like doing this slide, but everyone is asking for it. So I do want to preface it by saying it's not a zero-sum game. And also because Chinese products are sold to Chinese people, they're not sold in the US, so there's actually 2 different pies. It's not like the growth or success of a Chinese company must come at the expense of an American company. But nevertheless, if you just want to measure, basically the red bar might mean how much is the Chinese AI industry worth? How much revenue is in the Chinese AI industry? And you will see that China's gone from way behind to probably slightly ahead in the next 5 years. But keep in mind, again, this is merely about productization and monetization. US is still ahead in research. Now, the question is, will that research result in commercial benefits or not? So this does not assume research breakthroughs, which may change these numbers. So in fact, AI is just the beginning. If you think about AI at the top level, if you think about the entire stack on the server and in the client, on the client mobile side, you've got apps, right? And under apps, you've got development tools. And then on the server side, you've got data and cloud and servers and the storage and of course 5G equipment. And then you've got the server products and then the PCs and the phones. So collectively, if we call that technology, I think in the future it is likely that China tech will power half the world. And I think this is an inevitability, and these are the pictures in which I draw, the blue color being American-dominated, red and pink being Chinese-influenced. Now again, I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'd rather there would be more US-China collaboration, but it looks like we're on the path to having parallel universes, and Eric Schmidt has called it parallel internets, and that appears to be where we're headed. So with all the forces accelerating AI, It will create a huge amount of value, $15 trillion for the world, a lot of wealth, maybe enough to reduce or perhaps one day eradicate poverty and hunger. But it will also introduce a lot of issues. I think in US and Europe, most of the people are talking more about issues related to privacy, security, bias, maybe dominance of giants, giant companies, giant countries. But the one point I wanted to spend the last 5 minutes on is job displacement, which I believe to be potentially the biggest issue, which then causes wealth inequality. So what does it mean to say job displacement? Well, if AI does routine jobs, and it does it extremely better than people, and it's essentially free and doesn't complain, has no labor union, works 24/7, then many of the jobs will be better done by AI. And that goes from left to right, from repetitive jobs, routine jobs, optimizing jobs, even jobs like radiologists and the simple reporter, translators, they will be displaceable by AI in the 15, 20-year time frame. So are Peter and I going to be out of work? Fortunately not. Those who are doing complex jobs will be cross-domain. So AI is one domain. Those doing creative work will be creating things that didn't exist before, whereas AI needed to be fixed with an objective function. So is that enough jobs to be had? Well, no, because displacement's happening in the financial industry. Citi has given a warning. We've seen a number of other companies follow up and facing problems. Layoffs are happening. And also, if you look on the right-hand side, these are real products that we're investing in. On the right-hand side, you see a store that is actually like a McDonald's, where you can order a meal for about $2. So, and it tastes really good. I think for the Chinese taste, it's definitely better than McDonald's. So how many more Chinese people, when these F5 future stores are everywhere, how many Chinese people will pay $7 to eat at McDonald's or $2 at F5 future store? And that is a form of job displacement, because to the extent McDonald's share goes down 50%, so go the work, right? The jobs. On the right-hand side, you see a $2,000 cashier, and it instantly checks out all the pastries you buy. And you don't have to put any labels on it. It runs by computer vision. It's a wave 3 technology. So what happens if there's a lot of people who are displaced? Will there be a huge problem? Well, first, many people will say AI will create new jobs, which actually I agree with. But the problem is, any new job that AI creates will likely be non-routine. So even if there are more jobs than the total number of people, the number of people displaced who used to do routine work cannot take on the new jobs unless the new jobs either don't require much training or we find a way to provide the training. So anyway, coming back to what kind of jobs can AI not do, I think there are two types of things. One is creative jobs. The other is actually compassionate jobs. So if we think about all the jobs, not just the one dimension, but along the two dimensions. One dimension being what we talked about, creativity. Another dimension would be jobs that require compassion and empathy. So we will see jobs fall into these three quadrants, but there's an interesting fourth quadrant, which actually has a lot of jobs. The fourth quadrant are those that require a lot of compassion, but maybe not so much creativity. Elderly companion is a great example. All the countries are aging, and people over 80 require five times as much elderly care as people from 60 to 80. So who are going to do those jobs? Those jobs are not creative, but they cannot be done by a robot, because robots, that's too hard for a robot to take a bath for an elderly person. And also, even if a robot could do a decent job, people don't want it. So there are many, many examples, from teachers to nurses to hotline volunteers. So that means while the lower left jobs, routine jobs, will be displaced, there's going to be a lot of room on the upper left. So that's one possible solution to job displacement. Another, of course, is to do training. Amazon offers $12,000 a year training for its employees. You can think about Jeff is probably thinking about people in the warehouse and in the cashiers at Whole Foods, and he's giving them $12,000 to be trained to be a nurse or to be an aeronautics repair person. So anyway, coming back and summarizing, this quadrant actually shows you what happens with jobs. On the lower left side, those jobs will be done by AI. So so that's one possibility. And then another lower right side is where humans can use AI tool to do their job better. For example, a scientist discovering new drugs with AI tool. On the upper left are the example where AI is an analytical tool that could be magnified by human warmth wrapped around it. A good example is a doctor who might use AI to help diagnose some, many, eventually all diseases, but the doctors are not just an analytical engine. They also connect with the patient, gain the trust, give patients confidence. So that symbiosis is quite important. Finally, on the upper right is where human and AI are work together, but really shining human creativity and compassion. So this is the blueprint of human-AI coexistence. It is not trivial. It's not a matter of all jobs are gone, and it's not a matter of purely symbiosis. Both will happen. So this talk, I've talked about the next 15 to 20 years, when we'll create a lot of wealth, a lot of opportunities, a lot of efficiency, also create a lot of havoc and challenges, including job displacement. But I want to close with a note of optimism, because when all this is said and done, hopefully we have the wisdom and the capability of solving all the problems, generating the wealth, and finding a way to share with all the needy throughout the world. And if that is done in 25 or 30 years, when your children or grandchildren grow up, hopefully this is how they will remember AI. Two things. Number one, AI will be remembered as something that is truly serendipity, because it will have liberated us, humanity, from all routine work. And it would force us to think about what it means to be a human. And it will give us the free time to do what we love and give time to the people we love. Second thing that I think this will do is that we will realize AI is merely a tool, that we and we only are the humans who have free will. And we're the ones who will write the ending of the story of humans and AI. Thank you.
Either you have received a copy of Kai-Fu's book, or you're going to be receiving a copy of his book. Please read it. His thinking in this is truly stellar. It was best said that we have a chance finally as humans to take a vacation from survival. Right? And these tools will help us truly enjoy our life versus fighting to survive. Our next speaker was, for me, the highlight of our 2018 Platinum trip to China. His name is David Li. He is the director of the Shenzhen Open Innovation Lab and has been contributing to open source software since 1990. He is a co-founder of Maker Collider, a platform to develop next-generation IoT from the Maker community. The Hacked Matter think tank, Shenzhen, the first hackerspace in China to promote hacker-maker culture and open source hardware. And when I went with a number of you, 20 of you, to Shenzhen last year to see what was going on in the makerspace, it was an eye-opener. And as soon as David Li finished his keynote, I said, I need to take you, I need to bring you to LA. The rest of the community has to see what you're up to and what is going on. Please welcome to the stage an incredible thinker and doer, David Li.